This couple discovered love while they were losing everything. Love that became character. Valeria and Tomás did not meet at an ideal time in their lives. They met when they were both exhausted. Valeria was coming from an endless chain of jobs where her creative talent was ignored. She designed, proposed ideas, dreamed, and always ended up hearing the same phrase disguised as kindness: "It's not the right time." Tomás, for his part, had spent years giving his time to a company that promised growth and only gave back burnout. He was disciplined, responsible, quiet. The kind of man who carries a lot and complains very little. They fell in love without realizing it, almost like someone taking shelter from the cold without planning to. At first, everything felt light, but life didn't take long to reveal its true weight. The first cracks did not come from love, but from exhaustion. Valeria came home frustrated, feeling like she wasn't good enough. Tomás came home drained, his mind filled with numbers, deadlines, and responsibilities that weren't even his. They loved each other, yes, but each was fighting a private internal battle. As Epictetus taught, it is not what happens to us that affects us, but what we tell ourselves about what happens. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The first blow came for Valeria. The company she worked for shut down overnight. No warning, no fair severance, no recognition. Just a cold phone call and a few cents. For weeks, Valeria felt useless. She spent hours staring at her sketches, no longer believing in them. She doubted her talent. She doubted herself. And although Tomás tried to support her, his own world was beginning to fall apart. Soon after, Tomás's company announced a restructuring. More work, fewer employees, same salaries. The pressure increased. Mistakes began to appear. One day, after a humiliating meeting, Tomás understood that he was no longer valued, only exploited. Arguments started to surface, not because of a lack of love, but because of too much tension. "You're always tired," Valeria said in pain. "You're always frustrated," Tomás replied, not meaning to hurt her. There were nights of silence. There were tears that were not shared. There were moments when both secretly wondered if love was enough. One night, after a particularly harsh argument, Valeria locked herself in the bathroom and cried in silence. Tomás sat on the living room floor with his back against the wall, feeling defeated. It was at that lowest point that an idea appeared, one that would change everything. It wasn't a glorious revelation. It was an honest conversation. "I don't want to keep feeling like this," Valeria said as she walked out of the bathroom, her eyes red but her voice steady. "I don't want to depend on places that don't value us." Tomás looked at her, not with hope, but with exhaustion. "Me neither," he replied. "But I don't know what else to do." Valeria took a deep breath. "What if we do something together?" The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, it was deep. "Together? How?" Valeria pulled out an old notebook. Inside were clothing sketches, phrases, symbols. "I've always wanted to create something that represents strength, dignity, resilience, something that inspires people to stand firm when everything is shaking." Tomás flipped through the notebook slowly. Something shifted in his chest. "I don't know anything about fashion," he said, "but I do know about processes, discipline, building step by step." They looked at each other for the first time in a long time. They did not see two broken people, but two whole people who could complement each other. As Seneca said centuries ago, when we know where we want to go, any wind is favorable. They had no money, no guarantees, only conviction. The first few months were brutal. They worked from home with minimal resources. Valeria designed until dawn. Tomás researched suppliers, costs, logistics. There were mistakes, poorly made garments, failed deliveries, financial losses. There were days when they thought about giving up. "Maybe we're not enough," Valeria whispered. One night, Tomás held her. "We don't control the outcome," he said, "but we do control the effort. And no one can take that away from us." Without realizing it, they had begun to live Stoicism. They accepted what they could not control. They worked with excellence on what they could. The brand was born without big announcements, only truth. Simple clothing. Deep messages. Clear identity. Pieces that spoke of resilience, calm in the middle of chaos, silent dignity. Little by little, people began to notice something different. It wasn't just clothing, it was a message. A local influencer shared one piece, then another. Soon, everyday people began sending messages. This brand made me feel strong. It reminded me that I can endure. It's not just clothing, it's identity. Valeria cried when she read them. Tomás closed his eyes in gratitude. Growth was fast and terrifying. They had to hire people, delegate, make difficult decisions. And fear returned. "What if we lose everything?" Valeria asked one night. Tomás looked at her calmly. "If we already survived the worst, we'll survive this too." The brand crossed borders. It reached other countries. Media outlets began talking about them. But the most important change was not external success, it was what their relationship became. They learned to speak without hurting, to listen without defending, to correct without humiliating. They understood that love is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of virtue. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Years later, at an international conscious fashion event, Valeria and Tomás walked onto the stage together. The audience stood and applauded. Valeria took the microphone, her voice trembling. This brand was born from fear, exhaustion, and failure. But it was also born from the decision not to give up, to work on what we could control, our attitude, our discipline, our unity. Tomás looked at her with pride. "We don't believe in empty success," she continued. "We believe in inner strength, in rising without resentment, in creating without losing your soul." The applause was deafening. That night, back home in the quiet, they sat together on the couch. "Do you realize?" Valeria said. "Everything we went through brought us here." Tomás smiled serenely. "It wasn't luck," he replied. "It was character." They held hands, not because everything was perfect, but because they had learned to support each other even in imperfection. They had built a brand, but more importantly, they had built a meaningful life. And they understood the deepest truth of Stoicism. The real victory is not external success, but shared inner peace. And so, together, they didn't just conquer the world, they conquered themselves. Are you interested in Stoicism, personal growth, and real-life stories? Then subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms to stay connected with our community. Join the family of Stoic Stories.